My friends, welcome back to the greatness. Welcome back to the Class 1A versus Class 1B hype. I can't believe people are genuinely trying to be like, this is not hype. That was hella hype. You just missing the point. With that said, hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another one of our weekly My Hero Academia Season 5 discussion videos. Today we're here to talk about Episode 4, Make It Happen Shinso. But before we get to the video proper, quick reminder if you haven't done so yet to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, set notifications to all, let all of AniTube know that you're here, and without further ado, let's go ahead and just dive into this. I absolutely adored this week's episode. Now, I did say last week that I would have been totally okay with a Class 1B sweep. I still kind of believe that. I still would have liked that, but you know what? I gotta give the teamwork credit. I have to give Class 1A their due. Don't get me wrong, Class 1A, that's my squad right there. You know what I mean? Like, Class 1A, that's home. You know, like this is my squad. But I want to see Class 1B step up and be badass, and we do actually get to see that. Even though we see some absolutely top tier teamwork from Class 1A, Class 1B did not slouch, and I'll get to Class 1B as we go. But I do want to start by talking about the teamwork, because my God, Class 1A really went in. And I say Class 1A, but it's not even like it was the whole team, right? Because if it was all of Class 1A versus all of Class 1B, that would be hella chaotic, but I do feel like Class 1A would ultimately come out on top, just because of the crazy amount of, experience and power that they all have. But we actually see more, we're seeing these, sort of segmented fights, right? Like, just small portions of Class 1A versus small portions of Class 1B, and that makes it a little bit more even. And I think the teamwork on display from Tsuyu and Kaminari and Shinso in particular, those three in particular, really putting in work, right? Like, we should acknowledge Class 1A does start on the back foot, right? The immediate appearance of the immediate appearance of Shishida definitely throws things for a loop. Like, they weren't really, it was kind of clear like they weren't sure how to handle Shishida and Subaraba, definitely mispronounced that. They weren't aware how to handle Shishiba and Subaraba, because they just weren't, they were caught off guard and then suddenly thrust into a fight, and Shishida was just obviously, like, his quirk is insane. He's like this big, crazy, hulking beast, right? So they just weren't aware of what to do, and because they were caught off guard, they lost Koda and Kirishima really quickly. Like, really, really quickly. Koda and Kirishima get, jobbed hard. Koda, I can kind of understand, because, Koda's my sweet boy, but he's not exactly known for his battle prowess, you know? If he is without his animal friends, he's in a bad way. Kirishima getting jobbed out, though, that was a shock. That was definitely a surprise, because, Shishida just tosses him up in the air, he gets caught by Ibara, Vine just catches him, and then that's it. And I love the shot of the two of them in the cell, and Koda's like, ow, just laying on the ground. And then you just see Kirishima, wrapped up in Vine's hey, Koda, it's my bad. Just this awkward, yeah, that could have gone better. So, important to acknowledge, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for Class 1A and Shinso. Obviously, they started on the back foot. The teamwork doesn't immediately kick into high gear right away, but eventually it does. And even though we lose Kirishima and Koda very quickly, Kaminari, Tsuyu, and Shinso immediately pick up the slack and really, really take it to Class 1B in a cool way. And I feel like Kaminari in particular making a lot of bold decisions during this fight. We see him do that flying thing where he leaps forward and uses his electricity to propel him, and he actually unleashes a full blast of electricity, full body electricity, right? He goes full Pikachu, right? Volt tackle, but just by being held by Shishida, and that electrocutes the crap out of Shishida. And I gotta give Tsuburaba credit. That boy hopped the hell off when he realized what was about to happen. So I'll give him credit there. But Kaminari, unleashes like full electricity, and he doesn't actually short himself out. Like, we know that Kaminari has shorted himself out in the past, but this time he actually is able to use like a ton of electricity and not be sort of out of commission. We're starting to see Kaminari like actually come into his own and be strong without the drawback of, shorting himself out. Although I will miss Kaminari's like dopey face afterwards. So yeah, that's definitely like a thing. And I also got to give him credit. Like, he is also like thinking more in battle than he used to. Usually Kaminari would just kind of be like, I don't know what to do. Run in and see what happens. Right? Like, Kaminari's plan was always like, I'm gonna charge in, I'm a charge bolt, I'm a charge bolt, and I'm gonna charge in and just see what happens. But this time around, we actually see Kaminari like actually thinking. Like, we see him like thinking about the past with Vine, right? His fight with Vine, where he's like, okay, when I last faced Ibarra, she had to use a shit ton of vines to keep me at bay. So if I go, like, if I let myself get caught, then she'll have to use most of her vines on me to keep me in check. Because, funny enough, Kaminari is actually seen as the biggest threat there, right? Even though Shishida's obviously like a walking tank, Kaminari's electricity makes him the strongest of the ones there. He might not be the smartest, but he is in fact the strongest. But we actually see him like being clever and going like, if you send me in, she'll use all her vines on me. That gives us the opportunity to get the drop on them. And we even see him making clever use of the equipment. Mei would be so proud. But we see him remembering, like, wait, one of my charge things is on Shishida, even though Tsuyu had to tell him that that's what happened. Like, she even says, he's like, it's amazing that you thought of that, Tsuyu. And she's like, it's more amazing that you didn't notice that. But, like, Kaminari's like, wait, so that's on Shishida. I can actually have a direct link from me to him if I fire off right now from within that like cocoon he's in. Obviously it doesn't work because that would be too easy, but I do appreciate that like they actually show that, like they actually show the work that goes in. And speaking of which, can we please give some credit to the animators? My god, Norimitsu, absolutely, like Norimitsu's character acting here, absolutely amazing. Like the character acting on Kaminari, I'm probably showing the face that cracked me up, but the character acting, the smooth as butter motion during the Kaminari and Tsuyu versus Shishida and Tsuburaba fight. Oh my god. Now, Norimitsu previously worked on stuff like Heroes Rising, like they worked on the Heroes Rising movie, as well as like stuff like the OG Full Metal Alchemist and Soul Eater and a ton of other stuff. So you can see the experience in their animation skills, and they really bring it, especially on the stuff with Kaminari. I thought that they did phenomenal. So yeah, as I'm talking about Kaminari, I want to give the animation for Kaminari's big moments a lot of credit. So credit to Norimitsu on that one. And also, speaking of Tsuyu, Tsuyu is like a straight up leader here. Like, we actually see Tsuyu like being like a quick thinker and knowing her limits and like when she's damaged, but still being clever in how she approaches situations, right? We notice that like obviously Tsuyu gets tossed around like at the early set when Shishida like jumps in. He's quick to immediately toss down Kirishima and Tsuyu. And Tsuyu is genuinely really, when I say quick, I mean like her agility is off the chain in this episode. And she does move around like a ninja, which is kind of sick. But, and Tsuburaba like actually gets kind of weirdly into Tsuyu wrapping him up with her tongue, which I was like, ew, okay. But like, yeah, because it's like, that's gross. But like, don't get me wrong, Tsuyu's my girl, but like, I don't know about that. But like, Tsuyu acting like a proper leader, I thought was super sick. Because the whole team turns to her, if you notice. Like, they constantly turn to her like, okay, what's the plan? Like, what are we going to do next? And she's like, well, like, she's not like, don't ask me, right? She's more just like, well, okay, like she just sort of like she just takes on that role of leadership really flawlessly. Like I really really loved seeing her just be like, okay, well, what we can do from here is we can basically maybe like attack for like we can attack from all sides if I use my my what does she call it, like her toxic whatever, like I don't know, it's like this sort of like stomach bile that she could bring up, and it makes them all smell like her. It's again a little gross, but it gets the job done. And Tsuyu, again, just like being a quick thinker, knowing like, okay, like a quick thinker and a solid leader, like taking leadership of the situation, knowing what to do when her teammates are relying on her, and knowing that she's been hurt, right? Shishida like actually does a really good amount of damage on her. So when she's going up later against Dragon Shroud, she's like smart enough to know like, okay, I have to be really cautious during this fight. And that ultimately helps her save Shinso later. And speaking of Shinso, my boy Shinso, as you can see, gets to use the binding cloth, and that made me so happy. Aizawa must have been so proud of his boy, because I was absolutely like, yes, Shinso! Like, that was such a sick moment. I think the reason why I loved it so much is, like, we saw in the last episode that Shinso sort of felt like, oh shit, like, I'm really in over my head. And we see here, like, Tsuburaba actually does manage to trap him in that bubble, right? And that clearly does, like, rattle Shinso. He didn't appreciate that, right? Like, because it's like, crap, I could have been quicker. If I had the same hero training that you guys did, maybe I would have reacted faster. I wouldn't have gotten caught in the bubble, but I did. I'm clearly, in over my head. But as he's explaining that, Kaminari's like, dude, you have hero written all over you. And even, like, as he said that, I was like, I agree. Like, he really does. Like, Shinso immediately seems like hero course material, And I'm glad that Aizawa saw that. I'm glad that Kaminari and Tsuyu are seeing that. Like, even Tsuyu as well is just like, dude, no, like, you are made for this. Like, you are good at this. You like, sure, you're a little behind, right? Like, there are situations that you maybe aren't as equipped for as Tsuyu and Kaminari, or as, like, Shishida and Tsuburaba, but that's okay, because you'll get there in time. You do have a bit more of a catch-up period to do, but you will be a hero, Like, you will be a hero. You got hero written all over you, my guy. And I loved that they actually showed that not only can he be sort of a support character, because we see him being like a support hero, right? Like, we see him like tricking Vine into thinking that it was Dragon Shroud when really it was him talking. So she responds and then just freezes up. And then he actually uses Vine's powers later to wrap up Shishida and Dragon Shroud, which I thought was really funny. But we know that he can work as sort of like an assist hero, right? So like if you were to like go on with a team, right? You would probably want Shinso on your squad, because if Shinso can get them to respond, if he could trick them, then he can keep them steady while your main like primary hero would charge in and whoopeth that ass, right? So having Shinso on your squad as an assist hero makes a lot of sense. But we also see that Shinso has the capability to grow into a hero that can handle themselves. Like, the fact that he uses Aizawa's binding cloth, I think, is a big, big sign. Because even Aizawa, when you think about it, if he wasn't able to use that binding cloth, if he wasn't as well-versed in combat as he is, he could have been regulated to just an assist hero. His quirk is super strong, like the ability to just freeze quirks, right? To look at somebody and turn off that quirk. But if he didn't have the combat training to back it up, he would only be an assist hero. Aizawa knows what it's like to be in Shinso's shoes, and I think that's why he really took him under his wing. He noticed that drive to be a hero with that the quirk that seems more suited to being like a support quirk, but actually managing to hone it into something really useful. I really, really dug that, and I just love Shinso as a character. I just think he's so friggin' cool. And again, I got to shout out once again to the animators. Kosaka, Yukina Kosaka does the character motion and like big moments of impact during the fight with during the well, not the fight, but during like the binding cloth scene, where we see Shishida like chasing after Shinso, and like Shishida's like jumping over those pipes and stuff and like punching through a bunch of them to try to get to Shinso, and then Shinso is smart enough to like grab one of the pipes and yank it down. It's not enough, he does need to be saved by Tsuyu, but it's that moment, right? And Kasaka does a brilliant job with that moment, like that big moment of impact where you see like, you still see like, so you see the pipe drop down and hit Shishida, and you see like you see Shinso in that power pose, right? Like that hero pose. But you just see like the cloth moving. So you see those two stuck in that moment of impact, but the cloth itself still moves. It looks super sick. And Kasaka really nails a lot of that during this fight. We also see it later when Tsuyu throws Dragon Shroud into Shishida. They're sort of stuck in the moment of impact, but you still see like the tongue move and like the characters like sort of sliding to the one side. So that moment of impact mixed with just slight motion to make it sort of really sell the impact. Kasaka does that really well. And they previously worked on stuff like Heroes Rising, the My Hero movie, Black Clover, and most recently Jujutsu Kaisen, amongst like a bunch of other stuff. So Kasaka is definitely no slouch in that department. However, speaking of no slouch, do not, and I mean do not, discredit or sell Class 1B short. I swear to G. I swear to G. Because let me tell you something. Class 1B, that's my squad right there. That's my squad, okay? Vlad King was as proud as I was. Vlad King, I feel like we don't get enough of Vlad King. I like Vlad King a lot. We don't see him enough. But Vlad King basically like cheering on Class 1B was adorable. He's being like a proud teacher, you know? He's like a proud papa. Right? He's just like, those are my kids right there. Right? He's basically saying like, Class 1B, they're gonna take it to Class 1A. Right? But he's the announcer, so of course Class 1A is like, yo, this is a little biased, right? But you see Monoma like, yes, Vlad King, right? Like, yeah, sensei, right? It's just like really hyped up, and it just cracked me up. You guys know I love Monoma, right? Like Monoma's, for some reason, I love that little shit. And I love that Vlad King is like sort of encouraging that behavior a bit. Like where he's just like, yeah, Class 1B, we're going to take it Class 1A. Like we're sick of Class 1A always being like the stars. Like we're going to take it from them. Like we're going to take it from them. Like we're going to be the stars of this arc. And honestly, so far, like, again, Class 1A went in. But you better believe that Class 1B put up a really good like start, right? Like that was a good start to Class 1B. I want to see Class 1B like win some solid fights, and I do think that even if they don't, I like the showing that they got. I think Class 1B, there's just something like I like the underdogs, and Class 1B is basically just to me filled with underdogs. Like I still think of the time that we saw Kendo and Tetsu like go up against those members from the League of Villains, and they weren't like that was their first real moment in combat, right? Like was during that like training camp, and I still think about that because I'm like, God, that scene of Tetsu just like raging out and like knocking the one League of Villain member on their ass. Like I still think about that. Like Kendo and Tetsu when they had their feet to the fire, when they were put through a trial by combat, they succeeded, right? And I think that all of Class 1B can do that, right? Like, I do think that Class 1B has the same potential and skill that Class 1A have. If anything, they have Vlad King has been a solid teacher because he's not getting them into situations like that. Don't get me wrong, Aizawa was one of my favorite characters in the entire series. However, Vlad King is like being a smart teacher and being like, okay, I'm going to train you on how to be a hero and use your quirks properly before you get thrown into the fire, you know? Like, I'm going to keep you in the frying pan before I toss you into the fire, right? I'm going to let you simmer. I'm going to build your quirks before I throw you in. And again, like I said, we can argue that, yeah, Class 1A did win, right? But it was not easy. This was not a steamroll. And in fact, I'm going to start by talking about the character who surprised me the most and who I'm actually really enjoying now, and I hope we get to see more of them, Shishida. Shishida was an absolute champ, right? Like, I love that Shishida is basically just Sasquatch from Alpha Flight as a Canadian. I appreciate that. But Shishida was like a total champ. I love that he has the name like Gavauden. Gavauden. It's been forever since I was in a French class, so I'm trying to think of how that would be pronounced. Gavauden. Gavauden. I don't know. Gavaudin. This hero name, I was like, Gavaudin, that's a weird name, right? Like, why that? It's French, which immediately means I like it. But I liked Apocalypse better because I was like, that's a funny name, but it is a little hard to say, right? Like Apocalypse, apocalyptic beast, right? And he's like, it's actually Gavaudin, right? Like his own classmates are like, okay, but like Apocalypse is cool, right? Like that's a cool name, apocalyptic beast. It's a cool name, but he likes Gavaudin, and I like the sort of like, funny enough, like beast, like Hank McCoy vibe to Shishida, where he is this like big hulking beast, right? But at the same time, he's like kind of nice and sweet, you know, like he is like a genuinely like pleasant dude, you know, like when you see him talking to Class 1B, he's like a nice guy. Even when he's fighting with Class 1A, he's like, I'm going to whoop that ass, but I'm not like doing it to be mean. I'm trying to help my class win. You know, like Shishida comes across like a genuinely nice dude, like a proper hero. And there's not much to talk about in terms of the design time. However, I will talk about designs and some like hero name stuff, because you know what? When am I going to get the opportunity to talk about Class 1B again? Probably not for a while. So I'm going to take my opportunity to talk about Class 1B characters by characters as they show up, right? So let's talk about Shishida. And I gotta say, immediately, the fact that the character has brown fur makes the most sense. Like, the most sense. In terms of, like, aesthetic, it makes sense why it would be brown fur, because, like, most beasts that we are familiar with typically have brown fur. However, brown as a color is typically noted to be dependable, right? Like, brown is very dependable, if a bit dull. And I do kind of get that from Shishida. Like, when I say that he reminds me of Beast from X-Men, I don't mean in terms of intelligence. I'll just say that. Like, Shishida's not very bright. And I do think that the color brown is definitely indicative of that. When you see brown, you think of, like, it's a dependable color. You can rely on the color brown, right? Like, a lot of people find just brown to be sort of, like, comforting, reliable, but it's a bit boring. It's a bit dull, right? Like, it's not as boring as beige, and we'll get to why I'm bringing up beige later, super rubber, but, like, we'll get to it. Shishida definitely gives off that sort of, like, dependable, but a bit dull, and when I say dull, I don't mean boring, I mean dull as in, like, not the brightest. You know, he's like, not very sharp. But when it comes to the name Gavaudin, I think what's from what I gather, because I did have to like go on the wiki to be like, what does that mean? Like I was like, okay, I'm gonna look up Gavaudin and see what comes up, and you know, the character shows up, but then you also get the Gavaudin as in like the beast that apparently terrorized a former French province named Gavaudin. So that's where he got the name from. So there was this beast that terrorized this former French province by the name of Gavaudin. And so I guess Shishida must have heard that story at some point and said, like, you know what? That's me. Like, I'm going to own that name. This crazy man-eating beast, right? But I'm going to take it and I'm going to turn it into something good. And I think that that's really telling of who Shishida is, right? Like, Shishida is this sort of, like, scary, like, intimidating, big, monstrous, hulking beast, but he's genuinely a sweet dude. Right? And I think the name Gavaudin, right? This like man-eating monster that terrorized this French province, taking that name and then turning it into something good, and like that sort of like subverting your expectations, I think is very telling of who Shishida is. So I really, really dug that. I thought they really did a good job with Shishida's character on that front, and his character design, and just the hero name in general. So Horikoshi, you're doing good work. Next up, I'm going to talk about Ibarra, aka Vine. Legitimately a powerhouse. Like, a legitimate powerhouse on Class 1B. I think, honestly, Vine could go toe-to-toe with most of Class 1A. Like, you put her in a one-on-one versus most of Class 1A, I genuinely think Vine would come out on top against most of them. And I'm not, like, that's not me joking. Like, I'm being serious. Like, I know I support Class 1B, and, like, I'm a big Class 1B cheerleader, but I really think Vine takes it to most of Class 1A. I think a lot of characters in Class 1B take it to Class 1A. Others don't, and we'll get to them as we go. But I do think that Ibara and even Shishida can take it to a lot of Class 1B. However, I would say that even though Vine is a legitimate powerhouse, it's also clear that she's not the most clever, right? Her and Shishida both have the same sort of flaw, where they're both big powerhouses, but they're not super clever, right? Because like what ends up being their undoing, Ibara's undoing at the very least, is that Shinso is just way more clever, right? Like Shinso is able to sort of use that moment of chaos to trick Ibara into thinking that Hiryu is talking, Dragon Shroud, but it was actually him, so she gets hypnotized. So if she actually like took a second to remember that there's a guy who can mimic their voices, then, you know, she wouldn't have gotten caught in that situation. But Ibara as a character, I do think is just a legitimate powerhouse and will be a super solid pro hero when the time comes. As for her character design, genuinely one of the best character designs when it comes to like their hero costume. At first I didn't like it, but the more I looked at it and the more time you sort of spend with Vine, I really love this hero outfit, and I'll tell you why. Because now it's basically just a white dress with her hair like going crazy, right? Like you see the green vines and the white dress. This actually makes so much sense in terms of like her character and what she's going for. Obviously the character name I don't have to tell you, Vine. Obviously it's named after the app, the dead app. No, but obviously it's named after her hair. But I think what's interesting about Vine as a character is that she's very much clearly trying to ape off the whole Mother Nature thing. And it makes sense. She's literally Mother Nature personified in this outfit. Because green, obviously indicating nature, white indicating purity, right? Like Mother Nature is pure, raw nature, right? Like that's the idea. Like Mother Nature is pure, it's innocent, right? Like there is no like good, bad. It just is, right? Like nature just kind of is. And then the green, the sort of like restorative color, but it can be constricting, right? Like Mother Nature can be nice and nurturing. It can also mess you up. So I think like that pure innocence of the white dress mixed with the green hair, the green vines, it actually makes so much sense. I think Ibara's design is probably one of the better ones. I really like Ibara. I think Ibara is super cool. I wish we got to see more of her. I think she's really funny. I love the whole like, forgive this foolish sheep, right? It's like, I really like Vine. I think she's super sick. And I miss Vine the app. I don't know why you needed to know that, but now you know that. Moving on, Hiryu and slash Dragon Shroud, and then we got Super Robber after. I don't have as much to say about these two, but I will say Dragon Shroud's design is like the definition of cool, right? It's like this like mostly black with like red highlights. He's got the red belt, right, to sort of indicate like, when I see the red belt, I immediately thought of like martial artist, right? Like badass, like a red belt. He's like black and red is just like, there's this thing called the rule of cool in design, right? Sometimes the design doesn't have to say anything. Sometimes it could just look cool, right? Like sometimes the design is just meant to be like, damn, that's cool, right? And that's Dragon Shroud's design. It's also Dragon Shroud's name is just cool, right? Like he screams cool. His quirk being to like build scales that he can use as like a defense, right? So like he can build up these scales to sort of like harden his skin. Similar to Tetsu and Kirishima, but the difference is he can also fire them, right? So he can also like he can build the scales and then shoot them, which is so cool. But the other thing I think that I'm like really into when it comes to Dragon Shroud's character is that his outfit is clearly styled after Jiangshi, which is a hopping zombie. Now, this is like a Jiangshi, and forgive me if I'm wrong. When it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm typically wrong. I should have asked Ku, because I feel like this might be in a Donghua or something at some point. But a Jiangshi is basically a hopping zombie. Now, as a zombie boy myself, allow me to tell you that I do keep track of my fellow zombies. So a hopping zombie basically is, it is like they're dead, right? But you put this talisman on them and then they come back. And I believe they just sort of like hop around with their arms out. You've definitely seen Jiangshi in animation at some point, right? Like they've been in anime before. So you've definitely seen a Jiangshi before. But the difference is that the talisman isn't placed over the head, right? Most recently, I'd say that you would have seen a Zhangxi if you've played Genshin Impact. Chi-Chi is a Zhangxi. She has like that little talisman over top of her hat. With Dragon Shroud, he has sort of like an homage to that hat. He has like this sort of like visor thing, right? So he has the visor thing as the hat, and then the talisman is actually the visor itself, right? So he has the hat is like holding up the visor, and then the visor itself is the talisman. That's a super cool design. Like, I was like, that's so neat. My only issue with it, what does that have to do with dragons? What does that have to do with your quirk? Like, it's cool, but are you a zombie? Are you a vampire? Are you undead? Are you dead? I don't quite get it. Like, I like it, but it doesn't super work. And Dragon Shroud as a character, like, Hiryu doesn't really get to do much. Like, he does get to fight Tsuyu, but it's mostly off screen. So Dragon Shroud doesn't really get to do much except be scared when Class 1A shows up, and that was a bit disappointing. I do think his quirk is cool. I think Dragon Shroud as a character should get more screen time, and his outfit itself is sick. I'm like, it doesn't say a lot about the character. It just looks cool, you know? Because it does look cool. But that's sort of where I sit with Dragon Shroud. Lastly, Tsuburaba. Now, I am a cheerleader for Class 1B. I admit this. However, Horikoshi dropped the ball with Tsuburaba. This costume is kind of lame, honestly. I don't like it. I don't really like this costume. I don't really like Tsuburaba as a character. He doesn't get to do a lot. And again, like, he just has like the one character moment where I'm like, so he liked being wrapped up in a long tongue? It's weird. I was like, that's okay. I mean, like, look, man, I ain't gonna kink shame you, but like, that's weird. that was my only takeaway, was just, that's weird. Okay. And yeah, like I said, the costume is kind of lame. His hero name is just his last name. Like Todoroki's hero name is just Shoto, which is another thing that I'm like, lame. That's just lame. You're a superhero. You know, you should have like a cool name. So like Tsuburaba, that's not a superhero name. Like Deku, I at least get it. It's a nickname that he turned into a hero name, right? So it's like, cool, I get it. And I think of Deku Shrub every time he says it. From like Legend of Zelda. So like, I at least that makes sense to me, right? Tsuburaba, that's not a hero name. That's you could have, like, I don't know. Come up with something better. I'm surprised Vlad King let you get away with that, man. Like, what? I feel like this is the welcome to roasting Tsuburaba part of the video. Like, I can't think of a better name, but I don't know, man. I'm not a superhero. I don't need to think of names, and I'm just some guy on the internet. I'm some zombie on the internet. If I was a hero, I'd be Zombie Man. Except that hero already exists. Season One Punch Man. Tsuburaba, I don't know, like, Glass Capture Man. That's lame. Maybe Tsuburaba is better. But when it comes to the design itself, the fact that this boy's pants are beige, the fact that this boy's outfit is basically just like his hero outfit just looks like casual clothes. Not great. But the fact that he's rocking beige pants says a lot. He looks like a skater. You know what I mean? Like, he looks like he's going to the skate park. He's rocking these beige pants. Beige is a boring color. You know, like, it does soothe people. It is calming, so that could be part of it, like this calming effect. His shade, like the shades of color used do give you a sort of calming effect, but it's also sort of a passive effect, which is like, I don't think what they're going for with the character. I think they meant for him to be sort of calm and relaxed, but it comes off as passive and relaxed. Like sort of this like blasé design where it's like the brown pants don't really work. The blue jacket is interesting. Like the light blue jacket could mean that he's trying to come across as this sort of relaxed individual, but we don't really, like, we do kind of see that in the character. He is sort of like chill in the situations that he's in, but it's more like he's sort of just like there. Like, it's not like he's necessarily calm. We do see him sort of get frazzled, but we don't really get to see a lot of him. So he's just sort of on screen for a bit, has sort of a bland character design, has sort of a bland hero name. His power is neat, right? Like, he can put people in those little force field bubbles, so that's cool. And it does show that Class 1B's quirks have been steadily improving, because they say, like, it was never this hard to break into these things before, and they stay even after he's gone. So, like, what's going on, right? So like that quirk is getting stronger. So it does, Suraba is basically there to show that Class 1B is steadily improving. But yeah, as a character, he didn't give me a whole lot. I went on way longer than I thought I was going to for this video, so I apologize. I'm going to end today's video here. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to boop that up snoot, share if you care, leave a comment down below, and of course, make sure that you hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, set notifications to all, let all of AniTube know that you're here. And of course, before we go, as always, I want to give a big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. Look at these beautiful people. Look at all these beautiful names, and hey, if you would like to join these beautiful people, there are 2 ways to do so. The first is by hitting that Patreon link in the description. For just a single $1, you can help out this channel, or you can go ahead and hit that join button right beside the sub button. That gets you a badge next to your name, some emotes to spam in the comments, and of course your name scrolling past the screen here, so whether or not you want to check out that join button beside the sub button or that Patreon link, either way, super appreciated. So once again, a big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. I went off on this episode for a lot longer than I thought I would, but it's because I get to do design time, and that's like one of my favorite things I get to do in these videos, so I hope you guys enjoyed. But anyway, bye!